All right. We are here again. This is our second installment of Lessons with a Lender. We're here with Rich Sproba with CMG Mortgage.
Hi there.
Good morning. So today we are going to be discussing all things rates. We're going to start with the relationship between rates set by the Fed, mortgage rates, get into how they impact each other, or really how that impacts the mortgage industry, what that means for you as a consumer on the buyer's side, and a little bit of advice moving forward on how to be best equipped to handle that process in this market. So, first, let's start off, Rich, with when we hear on the news the Fed has done X. What does that mean? Explain to us how that impacts us on the consumer side.
All right. So good question. So the Fed, and for years, whenever the Fed would speak, all of a sudden the markets jump or drop or whatever. But typically, what they're speaking about is what their plans are to deal with inflation by adjusting a few rates. And the biggie that everything is really talked about is the Fed funds rate. The Fed funds rate is currently 0.5%,
Okay.
and a year ago it was 0.25. So it's not like, yes, that is not the mortgage rates, but it's the rate that banks lend to other banks. So the Fed oversees that and they initiate that. So that's just the start of what happens. And then everything else, all the other rates for car loans, prime rate, all these other things sort of come off of that
Okay.
and eventually affect us.
Okay. So is the Fed rate, or rather, are the mortgage rates directly impacted by the Fed rate?
No.
Okay.
So all this talk about, oh, the Fed's going to raise rates so many times this year, that does not, it is not dollar for dollar the same as interest rates. The
Okay.
interest rates for mortgages, long-term mortgages, fixed rate mortgages, are based on the 10-year bond yield. So everything affects the stock market, and are people buying bonds or selling bonds, and therefore the yield on the 10-year bonds. So it
Okay.
does trickle down. When the Fed does something, it trickles down to the bonds, which therefore affects us.
Okay. Okay. So what are your projections? I know this is the big question everybody's asking. From a lender's perspective, what are your projections on the activity with the rates for the remainder of this calendar year? Are you expecting it to increase, decrease? What are you thinking?
Oh gosh, I really
Loaded
hope,
question.
I really hope they're stabilizing, because everything, just like the oil and gas, they have all these futures. So when we went to war, or we didn't go to war, when Russia attacked Ukraine, that supplies a lot of oil to us, all of a sudden our gas prices at the pump jumped,
Hmm.
even though it takes months before that crude gets over here to be processed. But so just like on the mortgage rates, we knew that the Fed was going to be doing something that the mortgage industry looks at and tries to figure out, okay, what's that going to do to rates? Eventually it's going to raise rates. So the mortgage industry has raised rates, eh, predicting what was going to happen. And finally, the Fed spoke about their entire plan. And now it's probably been a month ago, and there were no surprises. So theoretically, we should have said, oh, good, we were right. Rates are leveling off.
Right.
That didn't happen. So in the last 3 weeks, rates have jumped about a quarter, and it doesn't really make sense. I still think, and I'm still holding to the fact that things have got to calm down, because there's plenty of money to be made in the banking world with the rates the way they are. Our savings account rates aren't going up, so there's a big delta there that this doesn't make sense why they're going to continue to go up. So I'm still sticking with my hope that they're going to flatten out and maybe
So,
be the new norm.
right. Explain to me, what does a difference in the rates, let's say a quarter of a point, how does that impact your purchasing power moving forward from a buyer?
Great question, because that's what's happened with a lot of people that have been shopping for homes for months. Is we had them pre-approved in February when the rate was 4.25. Well, now the rate's maybe 5.25. So it totally, well, depending on their income and their ratios, it definitely raises the monthly payment with house prices going up and the mortgage rates going up. So, for instance, from 4.25 to 5.25 on a $400,000 loan, it's an extra $300 a month. So that
Right.
1% is about $300 a month on a $400,000 loan. But as they keep going up from 5.25, it gains even, it gets even worse. So it's a faster increase. So, which means that, hey, what we were pre-qualified for in February, we might not be able to do now. They might have to put more money down, or are they even comfortable with that new payment of
Right.
being $200 to $300 a month higher?
Which is, I mean, that's not anything to scoff at. That's a sizable difference when you're
Yeah,
looking at your money.
2,400, 3,000 a year
Right.
easily. And with taxes going up, that's a whole different story.
Yeah,
So,
it's exactly.
so,
We'll get to it later.
so we
Uh,
definitely need to get back in, and we're doing that now, at least with our clients. It's like, okay, look, you're pre-qual then, here's where you're at now. Let's double check to make sure you're still comfortable with that price point.
right. So is on the proactive side of things for buyers, is there a way you can lock in a rate? What does that look like? Do they need to be under contract on a specific property? What does that process look like from your point?
Typically, we always said, all right, we lock in a rate once you have a contract, which means you have an address that it's tied to and a closing date. So we knew if we needed to lock in for 30 days, 45 days, or
Right,
whatever. And
right,
that's
depending on
usually
that actual close.
right. And that's the common rates. When people are talking about rates, we typically are talking about the 30-day lock, which means if we lock you in now, your rate can't get worse. If things get better, CMG Financial allows you to flow down one time if they get better, which
Right.
hasn't happened this year. But
Yeah.
so that's the typical way. However, last week we just, this is a big issue, and we've now started opening up where we can lock in on a to be determined address.
Okay.
So we can lock up to 90 days without an address. So if you know your clients, I'm like, oh, they are here the next 2 weeks, we're going to buy a house.
Very
Uh,
motivated.
and we need to close because we're going to be homeless, whatever the case may be, then we can actually lock them in up to 90 days. And there's some other criteria. They have to have a house picked out within 45 days.
Okay.
Um, but of course, it's a higher price to that. So, in other words, to lock in for this 90 days without an address is going to cost about a half a point more in fees, let's say, than
Okay.
without. So, if we knew rates were going to keep going up as they have in the past 2 months, we should have been doing this with everybody. Uh,
Right.
but that said, well, are they going to go up? Well, we don't know.
Right. No, that makes
But it's
sense.
a good option to have.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that was a great starting point for anybody who has any specific questions. Reach out to Rich directly. You can reach out to both of us via email or our Facebooks, anything. If you need any help real estate wise, Robo Team is here to help you. Anything mortgage related, Rich is your guy. So I think that's a good stopping point for today. We'll be back next Thursday with another installation of lessons with your lender. But it was wonderful talking with you.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Okay, talk to you soon.
All right.